This is a day of
So
panic. I feel like it has been a very rushed day, but I think we're all getting here, which is good.
I think we are. We've got 33 people in already. And I
Wow,
can
that's
see that
amazing.
we're everywhere from Bulawayo to Chipinge to
Wow.
Gutu to Chichungwizawa to Gokwe. We are really all over the place here.
Amazing. I mean, this is the
Yeah,
incredible thing about technology
that is very true.
that we can just connect
So
in
we are
such a,
combinations for everyone who's joining. You're welcome to turn your videos off to save data. You should be able to see a screen that says mental health in high school students. And you should see the video of our host, Regina Chari. And I think we'll just spend like 30 more seconds and then you can get started and I'll just keep letting people
perfect.
in as you go.
Yeah, that's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, there's just 2 more people trying to join from the waiting room right now. And then I think we can get started. So for everyone who's joined us, we are very, very happy this afternoon to have Regina Chari with us. For some of you at USEP Community School, you are familiar with her. And for others who are not, we welcome you. As we said at the beginning, we encourage you to turn off your video so you can just focus on watching and listening and not use your data that you would use for your video. And you should be able to see the screen where Regina will be using her slides as she presents. And I hope you feel this is a very safe environment. This is a place where we hope you can ask questions openly. If at any time you'd rather be anonymous, you can change your name by just going to the 3 dots on your top of your Zoom screen and renaming yourself. And so if you do not want your name to be shown, you can feel free to do that. We're not concerned, although we think it's a very safe environment, we're not worried. If you want to ask a question anonymously, that is absolutely fine. So I will not do a long introduction of Regina because I didn't know someone else was going to be doing that. But I will tell you that she has her master's in social work and a lot of expertise in working with people through helping them work through trauma to be able to thrive more and be mentally healthy individuals. And as she always reminds me, we always think about our physical health and we often don't think about our mental health. So as you all get ready for exams, whether they're O-level AS or A-level exams, we hope that today's workshop is going to help you to stay mentally fit while you prepare for those exams. So thank you all for attending. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Regina Chari. I think the most important thing I would tell you about her that might not be in a traditional bio is that although she is American, she has lived in Zimbabwe for about 2 decades. And she is a mother to 2 lovely, lovely women, one who is nearly your age, high school age, and one who is younger. So as a mother, as a Zimbabwean American, and as a trained clinician, we welcome you, Regina, and thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I have one question for you. Are you going to be manning the chat if people send questions in, or do I need to be doing that?
Either Tapiwa and I will keep track of the questions.
Perfect. So please, if someone is wanting me to stop and explain something further, or if someone has a question about what we're talking about and we want to jump in with that question, please interrupt me at any time with those. Because I want to make sure that we're getting the information that people most need. So you guys, welcome, welcome, welcome today. It would be my pleasure to be with you on Zoom, but I would so much prefer to be with you in person if times would allow these days, as you know, they do not. And I'm going to introduce myself a little bit differently than I normally would for a clinical conversation, because I want you to know that I am talking about this with experience from all different parts of the mental health conversation here. So my name is Regina Chari. I am a practitioner and I work specifically with children and families who've experienced trauma in their childhood. But that became my clinical focus as an adult, mainly because I knew the importance of really specialized clinicians who understood childhood trauma, because I am a child of trauma. As a little girl, when I was growing up, I am significantly older than most of you. Like Rebecca said, I have a daughter who's similar in age to most of you. When I was growing up in the United States, it was the early 1980s, and my mom and dad had a lot going on. In our home, both of my parents were alcoholic, both of them were drug addicts. We had a lot of domestic violence in our home where my mom and dad would physically fight or get into altercations in our home regularly. We had the police involved because of the drug use and distribution of drugs in our home. So there was just a lot of trauma going on. Both of my parents ended up in prison at different points in my childhood. And my brother and I ended up in the foster care system. And we were very, very lucky to have grandparents, my dad's parents, who became our foster parents so that we didn't have to live with strangers. We were able to live with relatives in a kinship care placement. But that being removed from our home and going to live with relatives was another part of my trauma. So I come from a traumatic childhood. I had many traumatic experiences, and then I studied trauma. And then as an adult, I married a Zimbabwean man whose name is Nyasha, and we adopted a young girl named Ruth, who is now my 17-year-old daughter. And she also comes from a history of trauma. I would pose a statement such as any child who has been adopted comes from trauma, because any time that you have lost your first family and have been placed with another family, that is traumatic. So I am now a parent to a child who's experienced trauma. And so I have experience in all different places in this conversation, and I take it very personally. I think that our mental health and the trauma that we experience in our life can really impact our ability to succeed in life. And if we overcome the struggles that we face in our childhood and adolescence, where you are now, that can really strengthen and embolden us to experience even more success than we would have had we not experienced that trauma. But the key component to that is being able to successfully overcome the hard things that happen to us. And for every single one of you right now, you are experiencing a hard thing, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic. Never before in any of our lifetimes have we ever had an experience like this that has dramatically altered and shifted our daily life as this pandemic. So, if this were taking place, if this conversation were taking place 2 years ago, I might ask you, how many of you have experienced trauma? And a few of you might raise your hand. I might have listed some things that could be traumatic to children, and more of you would have raised your hand. But I don't need to ask that right now, because I know for every single person on the planet, the COVID-19 pandemic has been such a massive disruption that it has been traumatic to most of us. So I am so happy to be here with you today and to talk about how we can take care of our mental health so that we do have the highest possibility of succeeding well in high school. And I'm so grateful to those of you who filled out our survey and who sent in your questions and the topics that you wanted to be discussed in this webinar. I think it's so important that we tailor this to your specific needs. And one of the things that came up for a lot of you is stress. If you want to, with your little icons that you can use in Zoom, I would love to see a show of hands to how many of you are feeling stressed at the moment. It doesn't have to be specifically about school, but I'd love to know how many of you are feeling stressed. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about stress. Stress, the definition of stress is any type of change, of which we're going through many, that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. So stress is really your body's reaction to a challenge or demand that arises. And my guess is that many of you are feeling stressed in this current situation and having to go back to remote schooling, which is another change. Although you may have gotten used to it last year, it's still a specific change that you're experiencing in these past few weeks. And for many of you, your body may be responding to these new challenges. And we're going to talk a little bit about triggers later, but you may be feeling a little bit triggered based on how remote learning worked for you last time. If it didn't work very well, you might be having more stress about remote learning today than you did a year ago. So I want you to look at the stress response curve, because for most of us, we don't acknowledge that stress can be good for us. So if you look on this curve, it says good stress and it says distress. What we want in our life is to live in good stress, the positive response that our body can give us from stress. We do not want to cross over here into distress. But I will tell you that most of us live over here with our stress, and this is what we want to avoid. So in this curve, we're talking about our body's ability to perform and the stress that our body's feeling from what's going on in our life. So this curve, as it starts to go up, you see this is our comfort zone. When we are pushing our body to learn new things or to do challenging things, our body, our performance inside of our body rises to that challenge. And we can live here for a long time, and it can be very good for us. This is like if you are an athlete and you're trying to exercise more to expand your muscles, if you're trying to swim and perform your stroke to the fastest possible speed, or if you're doing the 100 meters and you're sprinting, trying to get your body to be able to do that faster, you are causing stress for your body, but hopefully you're not causing distress. Hopefully your body's living over here in good stress. And you see this line right here. This says this is your stress management is increasing your performance level. So every time you're doing new things that are stressing your body out, your body's rising to perform and meet that need. But there always comes this point where we reach fatigue. If you are an athlete, you know that point in your body, right? If you're running long distance, you know when you hit that wall. You also know this as a sprinter when you have overdone it in practice and you move past your body meeting that need into a place of fatigue. But this is not just true of physical stress. This is also true of mental and emotional stress. And for many of us in this past year and a half, we have moved past this line of fatigue and we are living in distress. And our performance is actually going down. We're feeling exhausted. Our health is breaking down, right? So this is why we want to talk about stress when we're talking about mental health, because if we move past this point that our body can sustain, then we are eventually going to see a decrease in our performance. This is why your parents or your teachers might say to you, you're going to study to a point for your exams, and then you're going to release it and let it go. And the day before an exam, you should not be cramming, right? You may have your Form 4 or your A-level exams coming up, and you don't want to cram the night before that exam. What you want to do the night before your exam is you want to eat a good meal. You want to get enough sleep. You want to go to bed on time. You want to set your alarm early so that you can wake up in the morning and do the things that bring you peace in the morning, so that when you show up for your exam, you are ready to go at your peak performance level. For some people, they will not understand that, and they will study, and they'll get to this point. And then the night before the exam, they'll keep studying and keep cramming, and they'll wake up and at breakfast, they're reviewing their notes and they continue reading and they're trying to do the math problem that they just haven't been able to get. And they push themselves so far that their performance on their exam actually decreases. And that's the opposite of what we want for you as students. We want you to be able to meet your goals and to succeed well. So we're talking today about mental health. And there's this quote here that I want to share with you as we move into our talk today. And C.S. Lewis, who many of you may have read some of his works, said this. Oh, sorry, I have a typo there. Mental pain is less dramatic than physical pain, but it is more common and also more hard to bear. The frequent attempt to conceal mental pain increases the burden. It is easier to say my tooth is aching than to say my heart is broken. And for many of us, we are struggling to acknowledge that our mental health is declining. For many of us, we do not struggle to say to a teacher, listen, I broke my leg and I'm not going to be able to participate in class today because I'm going to the doctor and getting a cast put on. Or my appendix ruptured and I'm going into surgery and the doctor said I'm going to be out for 4 days of school, right? We are not embarrassed to explain that to our classmates or to our teachers. But for many of us, we feel embarrassed to say, I am really struggling with the stress that I'm under, and I don't know if I can show up and do my best at school today. For many of us, we will have lost loved ones, or our family may be going through hardship like divorce. Like I shared, my parents are divorced, and that was hard for me when I was a little girl. We might struggle to say there's violence in my home or there's addiction in my home, and it interferes with the way that I can pay attention and show up and be present for my learning. For many of us, we would rather speak of a pain in our body than a pain in our heart. And what trauma means, if you take it back to the Greek word, trauma just means a wound of the heart. And for many of us, we have not been taught that the wounds that we carry in our body need to heal and the wounds that we carry in our heart need to heal. But both are true in order for us to do well in our life. And I just want to talk to you for a moment about what that looks like to experience healing for the wounds of our heart. You will know what those wounds that you have experienced are. You may remember some painful things that happened to you when you were a little kid. You may remember something painful that happened in your life last week. But when your heart is hurting from something, we need 3 things in order for those to heal. And if we are going to be able to focus and have our learning experience be the best that it can possibly be, we need to heal from our hurts using these 3 things. The first one is that we need time. It takes each of us a different amount of time to heal from our hardships. It really does. My parents got divorced, and that was traumatic for me. It might take me a year to heal from that hurt. It might take someone else 3 months. It might take someone else 3 years. There's no set amount of time that a trauma requires in order to heal. The second thing that we need is we need to be able to tell our story. So just like I've shared a little bit of my story with you here, I, many years ago as a young girl, went to counseling, and I told a counselor my story so that I would have space in order to share what was going on in my heart. And by telling my story over and over and over in those counseling sessions, as well as telling my story to my friends and to my teachers and to my pastor at church, to the safe people in my life, when I shared my story with them, every single time the burden got a little bit lighter. And the third thing that we need, so that they all start with T's so that they're easy to remember, I made the third one tears. And what that really means is that we do need to shed our tears, but more than anything, we need to be able to express our emotions about our story. And for most of us, these hard things that have happened in our life are going to have hard emotions. And for some of us, we may have been taught that anger or sadness or fear are not good emotions, that they're not emotions that we should have. But the truth is, all of our emotions serve a purpose. I think that they are a gift from God. Our emotions, the fun ones and the hard ones, are a gift from God to help us assess what's going on in our life. Imagine what it would be like in our body if we didn't have the ability to feel sadness, or we didn't have the ability to feel fear. And imagine when hard things were happening, like your friend saying something mean to you, or you came across a lion in the bush. Imagine if you couldn't feel sadness when your friend was being mean to you. You would feel what? Happy when someone is being mean to you? Or imagine if you couldn't feel fear and you were walking in the bush and there was a lion. I mean, you would just be in danger all the time if you couldn't assess what to be afraid of. So all of our emotions are a gift from God that can help us understand the story that we're living in. But if we don't express those emotions, and if we don't shed tears when we're sad, and state why we're angry or why we're having these hard emotions, or talk about what we're afraid of, then our healing is prevented. Sometimes it won't happen at all. Sometimes it'll just take longer. But sometimes it won't happen at all. And if we don't experience healing, then it's like carrying around a heavy backpack. I think I have a backpack over here by my desk. And sometimes when I'm talking to teenagers in person, I will fill this backpack with big stones. And on those big stones, I'll tape words around them of common experiences that we have in our young adult life. Things like friends being mean, or things like, I'm afraid that my school fees aren't going to be paid, or things like, my parents have been divorced. And I'll cover those rocks with those words and put them in that backpack. And I'll ask someone to put it on and carry it. And I'll say, what does that feel like? And they'll say, it doesn't feel good. It feels really heavy. And that's what it feels like when we have all of these experiences in our life and we don't tell our stories, we don't shed our emotions, and we don't give ourselves time. But when we do that, when we give ourselves the time to share our stories and our emotions, it's like flinging those rocks out one by one so that our backpack isn't so heavy to carry around. And if you have that heavy backpack weighing you down, you're not going to be able to focus in class the same way. You're not going to be able to read your notes the same way. You're not going to be able to work on your math or your physics in the same way, right? The lighter our backpack is, the more energy we have to devote towards our studies. So let's talk about mental health, because that's really why we're here. We cannot have an understanding of mental health if we don't have an understanding of trauma. So I wanted you to understand that. But what I want you to know is that our mental health is like our physical health. There are things that we have to do to be physically healthy. And for those of you, some of you might want to remain anonymous, and I am so happy for that. But if there are those of you who like to share, I would be so happy for you to jump in and shout things out at this point if you would like to, or share them in the chat box. But what are some of the things that you do to keep your body physically healthy every day? Can you think of some things that you do? If anything comes in the chat box, you guys can let me know, or if anyone wants to shout and share something, please do. But I'll start to shout some things out as well. Some of the things we do for our physical health is that we exercise, or we go to the gym, or we play sports at school. We eat healthy food. We don't overindulge in too many junk foods, right? We get enough sleep. Oh, Nyasha said we drink lots of water, which is exactly right. Some of us don't drink nearly enough water, but hopefully most of us do. So we drink water, we eat healthy food, we exercise, we sleep enough, and we spend some time in nature, in the fresh air. There are all sorts of things that we do to stay healthy. Yes, we take breaks. Oh, it is so important for our physical health that we do not strain. We have to rest. We have to stay hydrated. Thank you, guys. These are great things. Keep shouting them out, because I want you to see that so many of the things that we do for our physical health is also very important for our mental health. However, we have to do these things every day in order to keep ourselves mentally fit. Oh, Rose, thank you for that. Breathing exercises. We are going to talk about that today for sure. So for our mental health, I'm going to give you 10 things, and I'm going to call them the main things for our mental health. And mental health, just like physical health, is something that everyone has some level of. Now, there are some people who are more physically fit than other people, right? My husband is a professional athlete. He used to play cricket for Zimbabwe, and he is very physically fit. He was a professional athlete. Physical fitness is so important to him. I was never a professional athlete. So he was always more physically fit than I was, right? But that didn't mean that I'm not physically fit. It just means his level of physical fitness is here and mine may have been here, right? But right now, he probably exercises about the same amount every day that I do. We eat the same things. We sleep about the same number of hours. So our physical fitness now is probably more matched, which feels like a decrease for him because as a professional athlete, he used to be up here. So our physical fitness, just like our mental fitness, is not stagnant. It is dependent upon what we do today, right? A professional athlete will never tell you that he only works out once a year or that he was strong last season, so he doesn't have to worry about this season, right? An athlete knows that they are only as strong as what they've done right now, right? Their workout yesterday, their workout last week is more important than where they were a year ago. And it's the same for our mental health. What we did today is sustaining our mental health for today. So we're going to talk about 10 things. The first one is sleeping right. And this is a huge one for teenagers because teenagers need more hours of sleep than babies do. And yet teenagers get less hours of sleep than most people do. So you need to sleep the right number of hours at the right time every day. Now, some studies will tell you that teenagers need more than 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. And my guess is that most of you get between 6 to 8 hours on a good night. So you need to have the right number of hours of sleep at the right time of day. You should not be sleeping at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Or you should not be sleeping at 9 o'clock in the morning. We do not need nocturnal teenagers because our sleep helps to balance our brain chemistry. And if we are sleeping during the day and working at night, our body is going to realize that we are not working in the natural light hours. And that is going to sway our brain chemistry and make our body feel chaotic. So you have to sleep the right number of hours at the right time of day in order to balance your brain chemistry. You have to eat well. You have to eat a healthy diet. That doesn't mean that you can't have junk food, but it does mean that the more nutrients you put into your body, the more stable your brain chemistry is going to be. And this is a big one for teenagers as well. If you struggle with anxiety, which we are going to talk about, then you really should try to avoid caffeine. If you're drinking tea, you should be drinking decaf. You should drink like rooibos tea instead of Tanganda. If you are drinking coffee, you should drink caffeine-free coffee, decaf coffee. If you are drinking, like Coke or some sort of soda, you should try to drink a decaffeinated one. If you struggle with anxiety, because caffeine is going to increase your heart rate and it's going to raise your anxiety levels. So that is very important. This is another big one. We need to abstain from drugs and alcohol. This is probably the biggest one for teenagers because teenagers will think that they can use alcohol or drugs responsibly. But what happens with our brain chemistry is that we are more likely to experience depression and anxiety if as teenagers we use drugs and alcohol. And the reason for that is that your brain is not fully formed. Until you are 25 years old, your brain is still forming and developing. And so alcohol or drugs that an adult might be able to choose in reasonable, healthy amounts are not going to be reasonable for your brain because your brain is different. Okay, so we have a question about sleep. So let me answer that one really quick. Balancing brain chemistry by sleeping at the right time. But what if you are sacrificing so that you can get some time without disturbances? And the only time you can do that is at night, meaning you have to sacrifice to be nocturnal. Okay. This is a great question. And we need to be honest about this, that for some of you, especially during remote learning, home is a very challenging environment to learn in. You might be sharing the electricity if there's electricity at all. You might be sharing devices. You might be sharing space. And it might be very difficult to get some quiet time with electricity to study. Obviously, if you have to study at night, then you have to do that. Right? However, what you need to realize is that you are going to have to offset the fact that your sleeping hours are interrupting your brain chemistry and make sure that you're doing these other things. So I'm giving you 10 things that you should be paying attention to every single day. If you're doing 9 out of those 10 every day, you're probably going to be okay with studying too late into the night. Now, I would not say study from, 11 o'clock at night till 8 in the morning. If you can adjust your schedule so that you're studying from like 6 o'clock at night till midnight, and then you can sleep from midnight until like 8 or 9 in the morning, if you're still getting some sleep during nighttime hours, that's going to be better for you. But again, you're going to have to prioritize your schedule the way it works for you. I just want you to be aware that these are the things that are going to help keep you mentally fit with your mental health. So sleeping, eating, abstaining from drugs and alcohol, and then sunlight. We really need vitamin D. For some of you, you might take vitamin D in the form of vitamins. For most of us, we get our vitamin D from being out in the sunshine. We are so blessed in Zimbabwe to have such sun throughout the year. It's a little bit cloudy where I am today, and I think this week it's going to be cloudy and cold, but most days in Zimbabwe, we get a lot of vitamin D from the sunshine. And vitamin D is a crucial vitamin for our mental health. It helps to stabilize our mood and keep our brain chemistry steady. We, as human beings, need at least 30 minutes in the sunshine every single day. So if you can make some time to be outside every day, that does not mean you don't have to study. You can take your book outside and sit in the sunshine, or you can do you could take your lunch to sit outside, right? You can double up on some of these, but being outside for 30 minutes a day is really important. So number 5 is managing your stress. We've already talked a little bit about what stress is. These are these things that disrupt us throughout the day. Everyone has stress, and most of us have stressful things every single day. But our body becomes very adept at overcoming that stress. We just have to worry about when we go over that curve and our body starts failing inside of the stress. So what this means is that stress is unavoidable. We're going to have it every day, but we need to manage and release our stress every day. So if school is stressful for you, you need to take breaks in between your classes and release that stress. So let's say you have math in the morning and physics in the afternoon, and you have a lunch break in between. You don't want to be stressed about your math class, eat your lunch super fast, and then move into your physics class stressed. You want to be able to release the stress of one class. This can be done in 2 or 3 minutes with some breathing exercises, which we'll talk about. Maybe you want to take a quick run, or, take a nap, or read a book, or dance around. You want to do something to release that stress before you move into your next stressful class. And the reason that we do that is because we only have a limited margin for our stress. And if our stress keeps building and building and building, it's just going to pour out. And it's going to pour out in the form of unmanageable emotions. It's going to pour out like anger addressed at someone who probably we're not angry with. It's going to look like sickness if our body can't keep our immune system functioning well. That outpouring of stress does not look like healthy behavior. It looks like, all right? So we want to manage our stress. Exercise 30 minutes a day, no matter what. This is a non-negotiable. Preferably, I want you to do something that you love to do. If you love to run, then spend those 30 minutes running. If you love to dance, spend those 30 minutes dancing. If you love football, then get a football and kick that ball around for 30 minutes, right? This does not have to be, like 30 minutes of gym class where the coach is yelling at you to do something you don't want to do. This is about having fun and moving your body. So we should all do that 30 minutes a day. Now, the next thing, so what is this? Number 5, 6, 7 is have fun. Every single day, you need to do at least one thing that you love to do. And I know that when we are busy with school, it can feel like, oh, how will I ever have time? This doesn't mean you have to spend 10 hours doing something that you love. You don't even need to spend 1 hour. You can spend 5 minutes doing something that you love, but you need to do something simply for the fun of it. Not because it's going to get you better grades, not because it's going to, help you make a friend, but literally because it's something that you enjoy doing for fun. The definition of fun is doing something enjoyable for no purpose. All right. My husband has a hard time with fun. He doesn't understand fun. He thinks everything should have a purpose. And so when I say I want to do something just for fun, he looks at me like I'm a weirdo, like, well, what does that even mean? Like, it's not going to give us anything. And I'm like, it gives us fun. Like, that is the whole point of it. So you want to do something that you enjoy doing without a purpose. And then social connection. Oh, teenagers, this one is so important. At this point in your life, your friendship relationships are the most important relationships in your life. I'm a mom of a teenager, and that makes me very sad because I want to be the most important person in my teenage daughter's life, but I am not. Her friends are more important than me right now. However, when we are learning remotely and all of our connections are through the screen, we have to be extra careful about this, okay? We have to have meaningful in-person connection every single day. So if during remote learning, your friendship connections are all through the screen, then you may have to connect with your family a little bit. And I know that that might make you groan. If my daughter were on this webinar, she would groan a little bit. But ask your mom or dad to play a card game with you. Ask your sibling, to play a board game with you, or to take a walk with you, or, to do a dance with you. You just need to do some sort of meaningful connection in person every single day. And that often happens for you at school. But when school is remote and all of your connections are through the screen, this doesn't happen through the screen in the same way. And that is a webinar for another day in and of itself. But through screen relationships can play an important role, but they cannot replace face-to-face in-person relationships. And then the last two things are to be of service. I think that at least once a week, but preferably every day, you should do an act of service. Doing something for another person can help us feel like we're a part of a community, even if you're just doing something at home. But it also reminds us that we have something to give. It reminds us that we have gifts to share, and it boosts our mood. There is a direct correlation to serving others and the fun, the good brain chemistry that we need to be happy and joyful. And then this is the most important one, which is why I save it for last. We have to ask for help. When we are having a hard time, whether it means we're having a hard time on a school assignment, whether we're having a hard time in a relationship, or whether we are having a hard time with our mental health, we have to ask for help. If we struggle over and over and over with the same thing and we do not ask for help, that can lead us into really dark places in our mental health. Asking for help and being willing to receive help from others is a key skill of life. So it is my hope that if you're struggling with anything at school or in your personal relationships or with your mental health, that you will reach out. This is so important that when I am teaching parents about anything that has to do with children, I always ask this question. Parents, what do you think is the number one predictor of a child's success? Now, this means holistic success in life. What is the number one predictor of a child growing up and being successful? That number one predictor is a relationship with a caring adult. Now, what that means is the caring adult who is in our life. This might be our parent, our caregiver, a teacher or a coach or a pastor or a neighbor. This is someone that we know loves us, that when we are in distress or when we need help, we can go to them. It doesn't matter where you went to school, what grades you got, how much money you have, what neighborhood you live in, what car you drive. None of that matters as much as having a caring adult in your life. It is the number one thing that leads to success in adulthood. So if you don't have a safe adult in your life that you can ask for help, I want you to get in touch with me or with Rebecca or someone that helped you sign up for this webinar. And I want you to tell us that you do not have a caring adult in your life that you can ask for help. And we want to help match you with someone that can listen to you and that can help you when you are in distress. And we have a question that says, what if our friends don't understand that we are schooling most of the time and then all leave us? I will tell you that the number one cause of stress for teenagers is their friendship relationships. Because what we assume is that if we do not spend enough time with our friends, that they are going to forget about us. And that is just not true. What I will tell you is this, is if a friend leaves your friendship because you are studying, then they are not your friend, and that they were never your friend to begin with, because friends are not conditional. Now, some of our friendships are formed through proximity because we spend a lot of time with them. And right now, you're not spending time with the same people that you would normally spend time with at school. So it may feel like your friendships are shifting when you're on remote learning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ending or that they're leaving you. But a friend who doesn't understand the importance of you studying and spending time on the things that are important to you for success, then they aren't really your friend. You want friends who are trying to help you accomplish your goals, not friends who would deter you from accomplishing your goals. And we are going to talk about this slide. This is the one, if my daughter were on this webinar, that she would say, please, 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 do we not have to talk about this? But I would not be a good, safe adult if I didn't talk about this. So I want to talk to you about technology and anxiety. Because for all of the teenagers that I am speaking with at this point in time, in the midst of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I am hearing anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. It is the most common word that I hear. And for some kids, they're talking about anxiety and they mean I actually am having panic attacks, right? Like I have clinical anxiety. I have what could be a diagnosable anxiety disorder. And for that, we do need to reach out and get help. But for most of us, we're talking about anxiety as just unmanageable stress levels. But what we need to know is that our anxiety levels are going up inside of this pandemic. Statistically, around the globe, anxiety is significantly higher this year than it was last year. And last year, it was higher than it was the year before. For your generation, you as adolescents have more anxiety than any generation in the history of the world. It is measurable. And for a lot of you, your parents do not understand why you have such a burden upon you. But it is true. And there are many reasons for that. But I want to point out that technology is one of them. And I am not saying that technology is bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use technology. For most of us, technology is the thing that is allowing us to carry on with our work and with our schooling and with our relationships right now. And technology is serving a very important purpose. What we know is that there are negative consequences to the amount of time we are spending with our technological devices. So if you spend 5 to 7 hours on your smartphone, which most of us do, your phone now tells you how much time you spend on your screen every day, and it probably is more than 5 to 7 hours. But if you spend 5 to 7 hours on your phone, it makes you twice as likely to experience depression. That is a massive increase, and that is a huge correlation. So for people who spend very little time on their devices, they are less likely to experience depression. For those of us who are on our phones a lot, we are way more likely to feel depressed. So sometimes the safe adult in your life might say, oh, if you're wrestling with depression and sadness, you might want to detox from your smartphone. They might say, why don't you take a social media do a social media fast, which I know can sometimes be like a trendy thing. And I think it should be more trendy than it really is. We know that technology use increases our brain activity to a degree that is similar to actual anxiety. So when we are on the computer screen, when we're on our devices, if an MRI was being taken of our brain, looking at the computer screen and looking at a brain that's having anxiety, like having a panic attack, the images would be similar. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use technology. It just means that we need to be aware that when we're using technology for school, we need to reduce the amount of technology we're using for other things, like for social connections or for games or whatnot. And then we also need to remember that if we're using our screens for classes and for studying, that we need to take breaks in between and do some mindfulness activities and do some calming activities for us. And then this is very important for you all. The adolescent brain takes longer to return to a state of calm because it is not yet fully developed. So the breaks, like I might need to take a 5-minute break for every hour of screen time. You're going to need to take a little bit more because when your brain is anxious, like let's say this is your brain and your brain is anxious and you flipped your lid up here, to bring your prefrontal cortex back online and to calm your brain, it's going to take longer. All right. So you need to manage that for yourself. You need to be able to ask your body what it's feeling and see how long it's going to take you to calm down in between. So here we are with some tools. This is probably the most important thing that we will go over today. These are some tools for actual anxiety. If you feel stress welling up in your body, if you feel your breathing getting shallow like this, if you feel your heart thumping like this, that is anxiety. All right. And we have to help our bodies and our brain connect and calm in order to manage that. So I have a very urgent question here that says, what if what I enjoy doing most is on my phone, like novels, and I need to spend a lot of time on the screen to have fun? So in normal days, I would say it is totally okay for your fun to be on your device. I have a Kindle on my phone and on my iPad. I used to have games on them, but I don't know if any of you ever played Candy Crush during that era. It got way too addictive for me, and I had to delete Candy Crush and make a deal that I would no longer put any games on my phone. So I don't get to play Scrabble on my phone, Words with Friends anymore. I don't get to play any games on my phone because it just was not good for my mental health. But this is what I will tell you. I do not think it's a bad thing to have fun on your phone. However, this is not a normal season. Most of us are doing the majority of our working and schooling hours on the screen, and that is impacting our brain. So what that means is that we have to think of some fun activities for ourselves that are not related to the screen, simply for our brain to be able to recover. It's okay if some of your fun requires the screen. But if all of your fun requires the screen and all of your school and all of your study requires the screen, then your brain is going to have a very, very, very hard time. So what do we do if our brain is having a hard time? If we're feeling anxious, if we feel like we can't breathe, if our chest feels heavy? Some people will describe anxiety as like, I feel like I can't breathe, like someone's choking me, right? What do we do? So these are a few tools that I want you to be able to know how to do. So someone has already mentioned breathing exercises. These are crucial. And when I talk about breathing, I don't mean breathing where your chest is moving up and down. I mean deep, deep breaths that are making your belly rise and fall. If you want to know if you're breathing properly, lay on your floor, lay on your back on the floor and take a deep breath. If your belly goes up and down, you're doing it right. If only your chest is going up and down, you are not doing it right. Breathing should involve your stomach, and you should feel it go in and out. So a breathing exercise that is super easy for us to do when we're feeling anxious is square breathing. And what you can do is imagine yourself drawing a square. So you're going to breathe in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. So you're going to let's practice that together right now. Take a deep breath in. And blow it out. And then take another deep breath in and blow it out. Another deep breath in. And blow it out. And another deep breath in and blow it out. And if you take 4 deep breaths while you're drawing that square, you might want to draw it with a pen and paper. You might want to trace it on your leg or draw it in the air or just in your mind. But if you do that, that gives your brain enough time to calm itself down. All right. Usually by 4 deep breaths, you'll get there. But if you need to draw 2 or 3 or 4 squares, that's totally fine. A grounding activity. So I'm going to give you 3 different grounding activities. If you are in the middle of anxiety, these are things that you can do to bring your brain and your body back into connection so you can focus. All right. So this is, let's say you open up your math class and your teacher tells you that you have a test and you didn't know that there was a test and you didn't study for this test. And these math problems are things that you don't even know if you understand this language. And all of a sudden you're like freaking out, right? Some people might call that a panic attack. Some people might call that anxiety, whatever you call it, you know that you are like, ah, okay, you can do these 3 things. The first one is called 5 senses. So we all have 5 senses. We can see, we can hear, we can smell, we can taste, and we can touch. And we're going to use those 5 senses for a grounding activity. So if you ever come to me and say, I'm in the middle of anxiety, I'm going to say, okay, tell me 5 things that you can see. And you're going to look around the room and point out 5 things. Then I'm going to say, tell me 4 things that you can touch. And you're going to look around and you're going to say, I can touch my jersey. I can touch my phone. 4 things that you can touch. 3 things that you can smell. 2 things that you can, what did we do? Sight, 2 things that you can hear. And 1 thing that you can taste, right? So we're going to get all of our senses working together to bring our brain back online. Another activity that we might do, so if you are sitting in your bedroom and you are doing a class and you're starting to feel, right? I might say to you, look around the room and tell me everything that you see in this room that is blue. I would just pick one color in the bedroom, and I would ask you to point out every single thing that's that color. And the last one that I would do with you is a math one. For those of you who love math, this would be really good for you. I would say count backwards by 6s from 100. Okay, so you'll start with 100 and then go to 94. I'm not good with math, so that's as far as I'm going to go, but you'll try to count from 100 to 0 going by 6s, right? So you just pick a random number. And then when all else fails, you move your body, right? You get up, you put on a song that you like, and you do a little dance. You do 10 star jumps. You walk to your front gate and back. If all else fails, you move a muscle and change your thought, right? We can't always change what our brain is telling us, but if we move our body, we can focus on something else. So those are the tools that I would most like you to use. We only have a few minutes left, so I do want you to be able to get your questions in right away if you have any. And I'm going to go over these last few tools. So I want you to assess, draw a circle on a piece of paper, and you can do this tonight or tomorrow. How do you spend your time? You know, are you spending equal times exercising, studying, sleeping, spending time with family, and doing your sport or reading a novel? How are you spending your time? And then I want you to ask yourself this: if I am struggling with my mental health, if I am struggling to meet all of the things that are expected of me, what can I simplify and what can I remove? Because generally we will find something in our life that we can spend less time on and something that we can take away totally. I want to talk about quickly self-harm and suicidal ideation. If you are hurting yourself in some way in order to release, and if you are considering harming yourself or attempting suicide, I want you to reach out to somebody immediately. Those are not things to wait for. If you want to know if you need to reach out for help, you absolutely have to reach out if you are doing those things. And these are the other ways you'll know that it's time to reach out. If your mental health is debilitating, if everything that you try to do doesn't make you feel any better and you're struggling to think about anything else, reach out for help. If you do those 10 main things for 3 weeks and nothing gets better, reach out for help. If your anxiety or your depression or your stress is impacting the 3 most important parts of your life, your family, your friends, and your schoolwork, reach out for help. Or if it's gone on for too long, if you've been struggling with these hard emotions for 6 months, reach out for help. And what do you need to know about seeking treatment? When you seek treatment and you go for psychotherapy or for counseling, or if you go to the doctor and they give you a medication, those things are not going to be the be all and end all for your struggles, right? Often we need to do all of these things inside of that. So you might need a medication, you might not, your doctor will decide that. But even if you take the medication, you still have to get all your vitamins and eat a healthy diet. You still have to make these lifestyle changes and do those 10 things. And you may need to go to counseling and have a safe person to talk to. All right. But just going to the doctor isn't going to mean that you don't have to do those 10 things every day. So how do you access that you are causing self-harm? Oh, how do you know if you're causing self-harm to yourself? So self-harm is like if you're cutting, or if you are binging and purging, like if you're overeating, or if you are not eating, if you're not feeding yourself, if you are, vomiting when you eat food, if you are burning yourself, if you, anything that you do to physically hurt your body, that would be self-harm. For some people, self-harm would involve drugs and alcohol as well. And if you're doing any of those things, or any of those things I just said are true for you, these are some places that you can contact for help. You can contact me. I'm this top number, and I do a therapeutic group for teenagers called Making Sense of Your Worth. You can contact the Christian Counseling Center, who has affordable counseling. I think they try to make it $20 per session, or the Friendship Bench, which has counseling sessions for free. So you have those 3 different levels of care that is available for help. And I'm sure that Education Matters will make these slides and these contact details available to you all. How can I make it easier for myself to track my habits? Yes, so there is an app, or you can do this on paper. So I would start by writing down the things, those 10 things that we just acknowledged, whichever ones are hardest for you to get in on any given day. If you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not exercising or drinking enough water, you want to put those things down on paper and just track them every day and check them off when you do them, right? So you might want to put a little, like, on a grid and fill in the dot for, every 30 minutes of exercise and every, liter of water that you drink. So I would say definitely tracking is helpful. And what can I do immediately to calm a friend who's experiencing a panic attack? So those 3 tools that we went over, those are for panic attacks. So if someone in your presence is having a panic attack, you want to do breathing exercises with them. So you want to get right in front of them, not close enough that you're touching them. You don't ever want to touch somebody who's having a panic attack. So you want to get close enough to them that you can make eye contact, and you want to say, breathe with me. All right. And you want to go breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, and keep trying to extend their breathing. You want to do those grounding exercises. You might want to say, show me 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can taste, right? You want to keep going through those. Or you might want to say, tell me everything red in the room, or count backwards from 100 by 3s. All right. So you want to do one of those grounding exercises. And if none of those are working, then you want to say, come for a walk with me. And you very slowly want to walk. And I often will just say, okay, let's walk. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Like, I just slowly help them take a few steps, because if they can move their body, their brain is going to integrate, and it's going to help. What if you feel that you need to feel sad about what's happening, and ignoring it feels like you're betraying yourself? Sometimes you feel like you want to stay sad. What do you do then? So this is a great question. What do you do if you feel like you need to feel sad about something? Your feelings are always valid. If something is happening that you feel sad about, then you need to feel sad. We absolutely have to feel our feelings, right? We said the 3 T's for healing are time, telling our story, and shedding tears, or feeling those emotions. We do not want to deny our emotions. If we deny our emotions, that raises up like stress. We do not want that. You have to feel your feelings. But feelings do not last forever. They really do not. Fear, sadness, anger, some of the hardest emotions pass the quickest if we feel them. If we start to deny them, they will linger around. But if you actually feel them, and work through them, they will pass. So I would say let yourself feel sad. If you're feeling sad for a week, then you're going to want to talk to somebody about that, because sadness shouldn't linger like that. Prolonged sadness is what depression is. So what do you do if the school is the thing that is affecting my mental health and causing frequent anxiety? So this is exactly it. One of the biggest stressors for students right now is school, because school is different than it usually is. School is harder when it's remote. And we have all the challenges that come along with remote learning in Zimbabwe, like access to internet and electricity and devices. So if school is affecting mental health and causing anxiety, then I would say you want to talk to a safe adult at school. Your favorite teacher, the one that you feel like just gets you, you want to reach out and talk to that person. You want to talk to your advisor or your headmaster, and you want to say, this is what's happening inside of my body. I'm feeling a lot of anxiety around school. Now, when we have anxiety, does that mean that we stop the thing that's causing anxiety? No, it doesn't mean that you stop school. It means that we have to do certain things in order to create margin so that school doesn't cause so much anxiety. Often it means changing a few habits or organizing our day a little bit differently, or just having someone check in with us differently. So I would say reach out to a trusted adult. If they don't have a tool for you, my number is here on this top line. You can, after you reach out to them, if they don't have something to help you with, then you can reach out to me and I will help them. Okay. Can self-harm become an addiction? Like if it happens randomly and inconsistently. So self-harm is never random. Self-harm is always something that you do to yourself. So it's something that you do intentionally, but it can be inconsistent, right? You might self-harm once a year or once every 6 months or once a term when things are getting really hard. Can self-harm become an addiction? Absolutely. Any action can become addictive, especially when it feels like it's releasing. So for many people, self-harm can be a lot like drug addiction or alcohol addiction, because it feels like it numbs the pain, but it doesn't do that. It numbs for a short period of time and then it comes back bigger, usually with more shame. So what I want to say about that is, for most people, the reason why we don't reach out for help with our mental health is because of shame. When things are hard, we don't ask for help because we think they're hard because something is wrong with us. Shame tells us this is hard because you are whatever. But that is very, very inaccurate. So shame tells us there's something wrong with us and we're the only one who feels this way. But what we know is that anxiety and mental health struggles are very high right now, right? It's not because there's something wrong with us. Life is hard right now because it is hard, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and things are consistently changing without any warning. Things are hard. And what we know is that we are not alone. More people are impacted right now by mental health struggles than people who are not. So what shame says to us is a lie, and that keeps us from reaching out for help. So that is super important, especially in regards to self-harm, because most people who cause harm to their physical body in order for a release will then feel shame about it and are less likely to reach out for help. If you have harmed yourself even one time, I would say reach out for help. Can anxiety lead to blackouts and frequent headaches even if you drink lots of water? Yes. So anxiety can lead to headaches because your breathing gets really shallow, and that starts to cause your blood vessels to have to pump really hard in order to get oxygen through your body. The headache is caused from lack of oxygen and can definitely lead for you to have a blackout or spotting in front of your eyes, or for you to faint. All of those wouldn't necessarily be from the emotion of anxiety. That would be more like an anxiety attack. So if you have those things happening, then you can use those grounding exercises, but without a doubt, you want to start incorporating those 10 things that we talked about. And I know, Rebecca, that I think we've gone over our time. So you just jump in whenever you need to tell me, and I'll just keep answering questions.
I think we can take one. If you see one unanswered question there, new question, we could take that, and then we should really wrap up because of people's data. But
Perfect.
While you look to see if there's one last question there, you were doing great with the chat, so we didn't interrupt you.
Yeah, I just thought I'd go with it.
I do want to let people know that we will consolidate the slides into a handout that we will send to you all. And if you do not, if you are not part of a USAP program, I mean, Education Matters program like the USAP Community School or YAS, and you are from the outside, found out about this from social media, and you do want that handout, I'm going to put in the chat right now our general email address where you could write and just request it from us, which is info@edmattersafrica.org. But otherwise, I think if is there a last question, Regina, or do you?
There were actually two that I think I can consolidate into one. So depression causes a lot of thinking, which can lead to questioning the genuineness of people. And the last one was, what if reaching out makes it feel like you're being a burden to people? So this is what I will say about that. Depression does lead to a lot of thinking, and it can, I think that often people will say depression is overthinking, like just too much thinking about the same hard thing. What we know is this, that when we share our story out loud to a safe and trusted person, that our body gets lighter, our mental load gets lighter. You can feel like, oh, if I'm going to share this, I'm going to be a burden to the person. But this is why you have to share with a safe person and a trusted person. Safe people know how to hear your story and not try to fix things for you, but try to listen to you as you come to a conclusion that is going to feel like resolution for you. And they know how to listen to you with empathy, because empathy is the opposite of shame. Our shame does not exist when someone listens to us with empathy. So if you have a trusted adult, I would say that when you are struggling with something like depression or anything that feels like a burden or shame, that is too much for your peer to handle. These are not things that you should be going to your friends with. Now, you can talk to your friends about these, but you shouldn't be going to your friends with these things as if they are able to help you solve these problems. These are the things, when I say reach out to a safe, trusted person, I mean an adult. I mean someone like a parent or a caregiver or a teacher or a doctor or a pastor, someone who's an adult in your life that you know you can trust, someone that you respect and that you know will listen to you. And you share with them that these things are happening. And if they don't know the answer, because they probably won't, not everyone will have the answer to all things. A safe, trusted person will tell you, I don't know what to do about this, but I will go and find out and get back to you. All right. So do not worry about being a burden, and do not worry about whether or not someone can be trusted. Share these things only with trusted people. These are not stories that you share with everybody. And these are not stories that you share on social media. These are stories that you go to your one safe, trusted person and you let them walk you through a healing process. And remember, your healing process always requires telling your story, sharing your emotions and shedding those tears, and giving yourself time. And that has to be done in the process of a safe and trusted adult. And thank you guys so much for logging in today. I hope that there was something in this webinar that related to what's going on in your life right now. And I would just encourage you to take those 10 things and incorporate them into your daily life. They do not need to require a lot of time, but they do have to be done in order to maintain your mental health. And it's been such a joy to be with you.
Regina. We really thank you for your time, and for all the students who are joining. We appreciate your persistence. I know for a lot of you, you were getting knocked in and out of Zoom, and we really appreciate the fact that you stuck with us. We will be sending you that handout, and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, well done, you guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.